Good morning, trustees. This is board workshop number 3 of 5 scheduled for the year. Thank you for the opportunity to share an update with you this morning. As we discussed last fall, we want to make sure throughout this process that we are not only updating the board, but updating our principals, teachers, and community as it relates to our budget situation. I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Barajas.
Thank you, Dr. Lathan. Board members, as Dr. Lathan mentioned, this is 3 of 5 planned budget workshops. It's our opportunity to give you a update, essentially. So you can call them budget updates, budget workshops, where we are in the budget building process, and what assumptions we're making currently to get to the current budget that we have in front of us that we are developing all throughout the months. We really have 3 more months, March, April, and May, with March 1st being tomorrow. So the budget season is moving fast. So the agenda, what we're always going to start with is talk about our current budget assumptions. It's early. Yeah. And Mr. Breed is going to cover the budget comparisons, because the budget has changed since the last time that we discussed. And so we wanted to do a recap of how we got from point A to point C from December all the way to February. Mr. Reed will cover that. We'll also cover one of these little technical parts that we are building into the budget regarding an estimate that we're making regarding Tier 2 funding and how that is posed to help us next year regarding actually the next biennium, not just the first year of the biennium. We'll give you a recapture update and then talk about the budget reductions that we're currently facing and how we plan on distributing those between departments and campuses. Rebecca Suarez will then cover the marketing efforts that we are going to be engaging in next year, or hope to engage in, regarding keeping our students and also increasing the number of students that are here in HISD, which is a great thing, but also the great byproduct of that, of course, is it reduces our recapture the more students we have, because that increases our weighted ADA. And then we'll talk about some next steps. So again, we've been showing this since December. What is it that we're building the budget around, the assumptions that we have to make as we start to put this $2 billion budget together. So we're going to continue to show these, because when they are updated, we'll certainly make the board aware of that. So again, property value increases we're estimating to be at 2% for next year. We won't know what that number is going to be until late April. So again, we have 2 months to probably work with this 2% as a property value estimate increase next year. My discussions with the Harris County Appraisal District back in January suggested, and I think I told the board this, sometimes since we've been talking about this so much, not only at the board level, superintendent level, but also amongst each other, I feel redundant, like I've said this before, did I just say this? I talked to Harris County Appraisal District and they feel 2% is a good number to use right now. But of course we won't know until April when we get our certified estimate. So we're going to continue to ride that 2%. The M&O tax rate, again, we're not making any suggestion that we change that above the current maximum of $1.04. Probably the next budget workshop we'll start to get into the debt service and the food service fund, which are the other 2 funds by law have to be adopted by the board. So I can just tell you right now, we're not making any plans to change our debt service rate. So our tax rate for 1920 will remain exactly the same. We're still expecting about a 1,500 reduction in students based on the 2018 snapshot. Again, that's being very conservative. We hope that with the efforts that our communications department will make, the district will make regarding, marketing the district, getting students back in, that number is too much. It actually is only going to be 1,000 or 500, but again, we don't know. So we're going to go with the 1,500 again as we go through the budget building process. You will see later there is a decrease in the per unit allocation, or the PUA amount that we're building into the budget. From a state-related perspective, again, we're not expecting any recapture relief from the state. There's no bill that's been filed specifically that says HISD and other districts that are paying recapture are going to get some kind of relief. There's nothing that's out there regarding that. So again, we're building the budget based on the current law regarding what our recapture is estimated to be based on our property values and also our students. No change in the basic allotment. I think a few board members are very familiar with that basic allotment. That's the main driver of funding to school districts. Unless you're a recapture district, of course, and it does play into a recapture, but since we essentially receive no money from the state, we don't look at it that way. We look at it more as a reduction in recapture if the basic allotment were to go up from the current 5,140. But we are estimating an increase in Tier 2 allotments only because those dollar amounts, which are really tied to the Austin yield, are in House Bill 1 and according to my colleague Ashley Turner in Senate Bill 1, which is the companion bill to HB 1. We're not making any changes to the PUA student weights and our current model. We are making an additional district contribution for health insurance. We spoke last time about the estimated 5 to 6% increase in employee health insurance premiums that we're going to build in starting in January of 20 because that's our planned year. But in addition to employees paying a bit more, the district, of course, has to contribute more as well to keep our health insurance fund at a level that can continue to pay all the bills that come in. Currently, no additional budget to achieve 180 costs. We started the year with $19.056 million for Achieve 180, but because of an increase in compensatory education based on the number of free and reduced, the current budget for Achieve 180 is now at $23.4 million, although we're not planning on increasing that cost as of yet. And regarding salaries, again, we've talked about this before, there are no current plans to include in the budget for next year any kind of salary increase, which includes any kind of raise for employees on any kind of schedule, master or hourly schedules, no step increases and movement on any kind of schedule, and no raises for any other employee groups at this time. So these are the assumptions that we're working with to build a budget that right now has a deficit of $36 million, which is different from the last time that we spoke, which was at $76 million. Mr. Reed will cover how we got to the 36 from the 76.
Morning, trustees, Superintendent Lathan.
Good morning.
I wanted to show you kind of a side-by-side of where we are today compared to back to December 3rd. Just kind of highlight just a few of the main items. The foundation school program revenues, that is mainly from a reduction in our CPTD values or our comptroller's values that, that's Tier 2, my apologies. The foundation school program is an increase in our Tier 2 funding. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that on the next slide. That's about $30 million just from Tier 2. There's some risk in that, which again, I'll talk about that in just a few minutes. We did put our interest earnings back up to about $9 million, which is what we have budgeted for this year. Right now, we don't see any need to drop that down like we had originally done. We also have some additional dollars we've budgeted in our indirect costs. So those are the main pieces on just the revenues. Next slide. Appropriations. So that change in recapture payment, that is simply due to our comptroller's value going down. So it was a little bit higher when I did the original budget. I thought our CPTD value was going to come back from the comptroller a little bit higher. It didn't, which is good because that shows us being less wealthy. So that reduces our recapture payment. We did add in, after our conversations at the last budget workshop, we put in $7.5 million out of the general fund to go towards health insurance. So that'll help shore up the $9 million that was being asked for health insurance going into plan year 2020. We're still in the middle of the negotiations for our property insurance. Right now, we feel like it's going to be about a $2 million increase. It might be a little bit less, but it's going to be about 20 to 25% increase in our property insurance. Obviously, we were expecting that, but this is our first number, so we will adjust that. We'll know that number for sure as we get closer to April, whenever we actually sign that. CTE, we do have an increase in our CTE FTEs, which means we do need to put money into the CTE program, so that department will actually have some additional dollars this year to put into campus programs. The campus PUA enrollment, the 18-19 decline. This is not the PUA cut is being proposed. This is simply the amount that we had expected originally to recapture from schools from lost enrollment. The $14 million was our first number in November before we had any actual PEIMS numbers. It was call-in numbers that we were going off of from enrollments. So there were kids that were in there that should not have been, or kids that weren't in those numbers yet. Of course, a lot happens as we actually go through and clean up PEIMS data for actual submission to TEA. So when we did that, we were actually only able to recover about 9.2. So that just means that there's $5 million out there that we're not taking out to schools. So that's a good thing, but it does increase the deficit, right? Because we had expected $14 million, but it is a good thing that we didn't have to take that much out of schools. So right now, as far as the appropriation side, it's about $40 million. And again, this assumes $30 million in Tier 2 revenue.
So we'll talk a bit about.
We'll talk about, next slide, we're going to talk a little bit more about that. So Tier 2, you've heard it called the Austin Yield. We also talk about golden pennies. So we have 6 golden pennies that HISD is guaranteed to generate the same amount of tax revenue per penny that Austin does. Austin is a much wealthier district than HISD. We're about $660,000 in wealth. Austin ISD is closer to $1 billion.
That's wealth per watt.
Wealth per WADA. So what happens is they say, okay, if you were Austin ISD, on those 6 pennies, you would generate $150 million. But HISD can only generate $90 million. Okay? So we get that difference. We get $60 million in Tier 2 funding. And I just want to kind of show you over the current biennium and then right now proposed biennium, those rates. So in the 17-18, $99.41 per penny is what we were guaranteed to generate. We didn't generate that much because we're not Austin. So we received $58 million in 17-18 in Tier 2.
And there's no recapture on
There's
those
no recapture.
because those are the golden pennies, so.
18-19, it was bumped up to 106.28. We got $61 million. That was the example I just walked through. Right now in HB1, SB1 also as the companion bill, these are the amounts that are being proposed to increase our Austin yield, guaranteed yield to for 2019-20 and 2021. That's $30 million from 18-19 to 2020, the $61 million to the $90 million, okay? Here's the big risk. And we talked at length about going ahead and recognizing this right now. But in the School Finance Commission report, it recommends decoupling that from the Austin ISD and then tying it to something else. It could be another percentile. They could set a flat rate, and then they have to change it statutorily. If it's a flat rate, by putting it in the finance the appropriations bills. So they could leave it in here, and we receive this $30 million. They could turn around and say, we're going to tie this to the 88th percentile of wealth in the state, or the 90th percentile, and we might get $15 million of that this year. Or they could go back and say, we're going to let you generate golden penny revenue, no recapture, but we're going to leave the rate the same as it was in 18-19, which means no one loses any money, you just don't gain any, right? And then they could use that then to go into financing the school finance bill. So that $30 million does have a risk. So the biggest reduction in this budget budget deficit from December to now is that $30 million, right? So if we lost that, if they basically just held everyone harmless at the 18-19 rate, then our deficit's back up to $66 million. So we really only had a $10 million drop in our deficit from December till now. Again, that's what happens as we go through legislative sessions. But we're going to go ahead and bring this in, and because we have not seen anything yet that is taking that out. No one's proposed anything to strike that through on either HB1 or SB1.
So I'm going to interrupt you real quick because we do have a quorum now, so I do have to call this meeting to order. The special meeting of the Board of Education of the Houston Independent School District is now called to order for the purpose stated in the duly posted meeting notice. The time is 8:36 a.m. Board members present are Trustee Dygard, Trustee Sung, Trustee Dr. Lida, Trustee Skiller-Jones, and Trustee Davila. You may continue.
So this is one that we are really going to have to watch because this could have an impact. The bill filing deadlines are not till March 8th. So until we really see what comes out of the House and the Senate on school finance bill, we don't know how this is potentially impacted. So just want to make sure everyone is aware that this is the biggest chunk of why the deficit went down. We're recognizing it, but that there is a risk to this.
I call this the new LOHI. Back when LOHI was unknown and we were building that into the budget, we were hopeful that the court would rule in a way that would allow us to continue to recognize it. Now that that's done, nature abhors a vacuum, another unknown has to come in, and now it's this. But given the history of these particular amounts of the yield, the Austin yield being in that particular bill, we feel confident that we can move forward with it. But the unknown, as Mr. Reed pointed out, is that in the School Finance Commission report, they had all these recommendations. They would say, if we did the following, we would save this much. If we did the following, it would save this much, reduce the CEI, all with the intent that all this money that was saved by making these adjustments all throughout the complex school finance funding model, this money that was saved would somehow be thrown back into the system, perhaps as an increase in the basic allotment. So that was early on thinking, well, will we benefit from removing the CEI or reducing it to 1.00, changing student weights, going to current year values versus prior year. So it was all about savings, but then we didn't know exactly how that would translate into the money coming back to us through the basic allotment or through some other kind of mechanism. And that was the fear, is that, people were saying, yeah, this sounds good, but there was no bill, no early indication how we would receive that money back in different ways that may or may not be tied to spending requirements. So within the Tier 1 allotments, you have spending requirements with Program Intent Code 11 and 21 and 22. So we just don't know, but when we backed away from it, we look at this and we think we can go ahead and incorporate this in at least now and see over the next few months what happens with the school finance bill that is filed, and if it has this decoupled from that HB 1 and put into another bill.
It's worth noting on this, on the Tier 2. Ever since Tier 2 started, back when they did that tax rate compression, this has been the one place that every year school districts could expect some increase in revenue. So it's always been a cost increase to the state every biennium. So hopefully school districts around the state will, be up in arms if they try to remove this or anything. But this was always the one place where we did get some additional revenue that had nothing to do with recapture, that we were able to generate some additional dollars.
So because of the CPTD value that we received, it does allow us to have a better number now that we actually have a document provided by a state agency that says, here's your initial comptroller value. Now remember, in January of every year, we receive the prior year's comptroller value. So in January of 19, we received 2018's CPTD value, or the value that the state is assigning to you from the comptroller. And based on that you divide your WAD into that number, and then it determines your wealth level above the two equalized wealth levels, the 319.5 and the 514. So the initial number that we were using was a bit higher to get to the initial recapture estimates, but when we got the number, it was a bit lower, so we were able to then go in and calculate what would our recapture be based on this new number. If you remember from the previous presentation, the 2019-20 estimate was about $312 million. Well, now it's down to $295. So again, back even just a few weeks ago, or more than a few weeks since it's the end of January or February, we were estimating what the CPTD may be, but now that we have a number, it changes everything. So as these numbers change, it's based on information that is more fresh that's being delivered to us, and the next big thing, of course, will be what Harris County is going to deliver to us. But even then, that number is, remember, a certified estimate. It's not certified, it's an estimate. And then we have to then step back and think, well, based on previous years, how good is that April number in relation to what they actually certify in August? So we have to maybe make adjustments, and I think last year it was 2%, and we bumped that down to 1% because, again, of the history of knowing that how that number vacillates, throughout the year, because it's a static number, but on that date, but because of protests and all the other things that are happening, you have to kind of back away from it because you don't want to assume that you're either going to be saving to recapture dollars or bringing in tax revenue that it's actually not going to materialize, then you have to dip into fund balance, so we have to be very careful. So the margin of error on some of these things is very, very narrow, but that's how we build budgets. So as far as the budget reductions, based on the new $36 million current budget deficit, and again, I feel like I have to remind you, the budget deficit merely represents what we would need to cut from an expenditure level in order to make sure that revenues equal expenditures, and right now that level is at $36 million. And you can tell on a $2 billion revenue and expenditure budget, that's not a very big amount, but when it is impacting campuses and departments, we try as best as we can to get that number as precise as possible within the the framework we have of all the different variables that we've talked about.
Thank you, Dr. Baraja. We have now been joined by Trustee Santos.
So there's the approximately $36 million deficit. Numbers seem quite precise, but you know, we just say 36, it's easier than saying 35, 457, 448. Distributed 50-50 between campuses and departments. The current $17.6 million reduction to schools represents a $73 cut to the PUA from the 18-19 level. Now consider just more than a few weeks ago, we were looking at a $210 decrease to the PUA based on the initial $76 million deficit. So it's gone down considerably, but that's where we are now. Our plan is to work with this number. Now the principals have been working with their enrollment estimates for next year as they started that process of going back to normally building their budgets about this time of the year, or at least in March, that when we get back from spring break, that Monday the 18th, budgets online will be available for the principals who know how to go in and use that tool to go and develop their budget, and that will be reflected as far as the decrease to the PUA that they can start building their budget around. But I have to say that right now, at the $73 deficit reduction to the PUA, as well as the cuts that departments are going to have to start to look at, that number could change, again, based on some factors regarding property value increases. So our hope is that the cut to not only departments and to campuses can be mitigated by perhaps any kind of increase somewhere else, or any kind of bill that's coming out that is going to flow more money into us. But that's where we have to start, because we can't have the principals sitting till April waiting for something to happen. They got to start building their budgets, and that's exactly what we're going to do. So just a little history of the PUA over the last several years. You can see the changes that were made based on the cuts for that particular fiscal year. Last year was $90, now we're at $73, and again, there's a possibility that that number 73 could change. But I also have to say it could go up based on what Mr. Reed covered. If all of a sudden the yield that we're building into the budget is not going to be there as far as the Austin yield, and we're now at 66 million versus 36, we have to distribute those losses in a way that it certainly is going to impact both campuses and departments. So again, the PUA will be used, the $73 reduction to the current PUA will be used by principals to develop their budget, and our online tool, Budgets Online, is going to be available to them the day we get back from spring break for them to start doing what they do to develop their budget. And just an overall view of how the $36 million cut is distributed across schools, and then all the other departments that fall and support schools. So you can see we ranked it in the order, but that's from district-wide services all the way down to the last department, governmental relations officer. You see what those departments as well as the schools are going to have to deal with as far as going in and have to grapple and try to figure out how we're going to incorporate these current level of cuts into the budget for next year. And Rebecca Suarez is going to cover some of the marketing efforts that we're going to be incorporating to hopefully maybe reduce that $36 million by having more kids attend our schools.
Good morning, trustees. Good morning, Dr. Lathan. As Chief Barra has mentioned, the expected enrollment decline for 2019-2020 school year is 1,500 students, which is an alarming number. We have been working with our demographer here in HISD to determine what are those areas that have seen the highest decrease in student enrollment. And he has different maps that he has designed as far as what are those areas. And we're seeing the highest impact in the Northeast, the East, the Southeast, and also the Southwest. We're also seeing that there's a correlation in terms of the number of charter schools that are, in these areas. We have the highest concentration of charter schools as well. Many of the students are going to several charter schools, and the ones that have seen the highest enrollment are listed here, including KIPP and Yes Prep. But also soon IDEA will be opening several campuses as well as in 2020 and adding more campuses by 2026. We are trying to figure out why our students leaving, and we are working currently with Dr. Horn from the University of Houston. She's the director of the Institute of Research. We're also working with Dr. Potter with Rice Herc, and they are helping us conduct a comprehensive study to determine and understand why are we losing the students, but also to be able to figure out how can we retain them and what can we do also to bring them back. Dr. Cruz is also working with us as well on this. In addition to that, we have a principal focus group. We are working with principals from the schools where they have the largest decrease in student enrollment in HISD, and we've been talking to them in terms of, what are they seeing? Why are they seeing that a lot of their kids might be leaving? Some of the problems that they cited include start times as well as lack of after-school programs. That was a big issue that many of them cited. And from what they're hearing, talking to their communities, a lot of what attracts a lot of parents are those schools that are K through 8 as well as K through 12 charter schools. In addition to that, we wanted to look at the different charters to figure out how are they able to attract a lot of their students, what are they doing? So we conducted a study as far as how are they doing some of their marketing, and a lot of their selling points revolve around extended days, also after-school programs, as well as the 100% graduation rate for many of their students. Just to give you a short recap of 2018, we did some marketing in 2018 that included billboards. It also included movie theater ads, mailers, as well as bus ads. And we were promoting a lot of different programs in HISD, including CTE, our free associate's degree, pre-K program as well. In addition to that, we also launched a campaign in 2018 where we worked with elected officials as well as different alumni of HISD or individuals that had sent their kids to HISD, including Texas Supreme Court Justice Eva Guzman, as well as the mayor. We had Sheriff Ed Gonzalez and other individuals working together and showing that they are standing with HISD. Something that we saw that was very effective was we did marketing around Woodson and their expansion of pre-K. And we did that through different deliverables, including, press releases. We did several stories. We did call-outs, text messages. One of our billboards focused a lot on pre-K, and we saw that this was very effective, the grassroots marketing for the school, because they were able to enroll 215 kids, and there's a lot of children actually currently on the waiting list. For 2019, we are very excited that we've been working on this campaign to highlight the students and the voices of our district, because everything that we do in HISD is about our children and making sure that they are successful in everything they do. The campaign is called HISD Empowers, because we are empowering our kids from the elementary level, middle school level, but also all the way to the moment where they walk on stage and they graduate from high school. This video, before we show it to you, I kind of want to tell you a background on it. We worked with several students. We wanted the students to be the voice of our district. So we went to different schools. We highlighted different programs, students that are involved in STEM, students that are involved in CTE, and we wanted to hear from them. So we created a promotional video, and we're going to show you the English version, but we also did one in Spanish. That we're going to be showing through different movie theater ads as well as television ads. So let me show you this video.
I dream to discover my superpowers,
where I mastered technology as young as 3 years old,
where there are no barriers to letting my imagination run free.
I dream to create and program robots for the future using cutting-edge technology in 6th grade.
Where my talent is cultivated and conquers any limitation.
Where I am laser focused on my goals.
And every step I take, I do it with determination and confidence.
spindle fibers attached to the
I dream when I graduate high school, I am college or career ready, and the sky is the limit.
At HISD,
I am.
I am a dream come true.
I know Sylvia was a big fan of the video when she saw it. So we also did a version in Spanish on this video because it shows that at the end of the day, it's about the students and it is their voice that can speak about what we do in HISD. We have this version in Spanish and we have it in English. We're going to be showing this video through different movie theater ads as well as television ads. We're going to be, of course, showcasing it on social media, in our television as well. Some of the other marketing strategies that we're implementing is, in addition to what I mentioned, we're also going to have different billboards that are targeted in different areas, web redesign, as well as radio ads. So I know last time that we spoke to the board, there was some suggestions in terms of, some ideas and what can we do to target our parents and our students, and we listened to that. So we're implementing that in this campaign. We are showcasing academic opportunities from pre-kinder to emerge to early college, high schools, just to showcase what we have. This is one of the billboards that we're gonna be posting in one of our areas. Is gonna be located close to downtown area. This is a family, both the grandmother and the mother graduated from Fur High School, and they have their granddaughter, and so we're gonna be showcasing this. I know someone had mentioned that we should show how HISD is empowering across generations. It's not just, now, but it's also years and years of educating our communities. We also have this other billboard that's going to be placed in Southeast Houston. This is a family that graduated, both the grandma and the dad graduated from Milby High School. And the son is currently going to Briscoe Elementary. In addition to that, we are promoting our pilot's license, Sterling High School. We've seen that there's a lot of interest in that, and so this is one of the students. We actually went to the airport, as you saw in the video, and we placed the GoPro inside the plane and kind of got a sense of what the kids are experiencing. And when they graduate from school, they have a pilot's license. This is a student, Jemile, who attended Chavez High School. And her story is very powerful because, she's an immigrant who had gone through a lot and was able to go to Harvard. And so she speaks to a lot of our students in our community. So we wanted to make sure that we feature her as well. This billboard is going to be located on 610 and Kirby, and it's going to be placed there. I know the rodeo already started, but it's going to be there during spring break. So we're going to be able to capture a lot of the people that go to the rodeo. In addition to all this, we've also been working with Dr. Cruz because we want to feature a lot of the kids that are part of the Emerge program. So we help them in creating, taking the pictures and creating the design and doing different billboards. This is Michael Brown. You probably heard of him. He was accepted to all of the top universities. He attended Lamar High School. So we're featuring him as well as other students. We have 6 billboards highlighting 6 Emerge graduates, and we're placing them close to the high schools where the students graduated from, because we want that to resonate with the students that are currently going to those high schools so they can know, I too can go to a top university if I keep working hard and with the help of HISD. In addition to that, we're also identifying other students in other schools, like Yates. I know Dr. Cruz and I have been in communication on that. Yates and other high schools to make sure that, we give a voice to the different members of our community. Movie theater ads, as I mentioned, this video is going to be shown in different movie theaters. We want to expand that and include even more movie theaters. For now, we have these. Television ads. We're going to be showing the video in English and Spanish, different stations in Houston. We're working with Univision 45 as well as Telemundo 47, Channel 2 and Channel 13, which have high ratings in the Houston area, and a lot of members of the community watch them. Radio ads. So we created a radio ad that also in English and Spanish, it's very powerful as well. And we're gonna be broadcasting that in the 4 different stations that are here. That way people that are driving around the city, as one of the trustees mentioned, there's a lot of us are stuck in traffic for a long time. So we're able to hear what's happening in HISD. Social media ads. In addition to that, we're noticing that a lot of charter schools are utilizing social media advertisement to target different parents and different community members. In particular, something like Messenger, we're seeing that a lot. So we're also doing that as well. We're buying advertisement in social media. And we are working with our interim chief of technology, so we can also launch a web redesign as well and be able to, show what we have here in HISD in a more dynamic and streamlined way.
So as we continue the budget development, here are some things that we're going to continue to do all the way to budget adoption is we'll continue to evaluate the budget assumptions. I think the next 2 budget workshops, we will, again, start with where our current assumptions are regarding the budget. Certainly with the legislative session going on, monitor that to see what kind of impact any bill or bills are going to have on us, either positive or negative from a funding perspective. And start working with my fellow chiefs to develop a strategy to address how we're going to look at the department cuts. The $73 cut to the PUA currently can be put into the system for principals to work with. And again, principals are going to begin the campus budget development, there's a missing word there, on March 18th so they can get ready to work with what they're going to have on their campus next year. And Mr. Reed just shared with me, if you want to tell them about the enrollment numbers.
Yeah. So we do have the campus projections back. The campuses are enrollment projections. They're expecting about 1,200 students less. We're at 15, so we're actually very close. Usually that's a little larger spread. Campuses tend to be a little conservative because they want to gain funds in the fall when they do the final budget settle up. But I am glad to see right now that at least for now we are very close with the principal's projections.
So we've had a sort of mind meld and Mr. Reed indicated that in years past, as he said, it's not been that close. So that's good news that, we're kind of seeing the same thing and we're all kind of being very conservative regarding students for next year. So.